Connor Stalions, the staffer at Michigan.
What a great name.
It is really
I can't believe we
name.
haven't. That's really what I want to focus on is this guy's name is Connor Stalions.
Connor Stalions. Some new details have emerged about the scheme that Connor Stalions was at the center of, and Jim Harbaugh had no idea. Bull. New details. First reporting from ESPN that he used his own name to purchase tickets for more than 30 games over the past 3 years at 11 different Big Ten schools. And they're not done. In fact, the NCAA, according to this report from Pete Thamel at ESPN, and Mark Schlabach as well contributed to it, the NCAA is going to receive video evidence this week of technology, which is against multiple rules, used in scouting tied to the tickets purchased by Stalions. An opposing Big Ten school looked up in-stadium surveillance video from a game earlier this year, and sources said the person in the seat of the ticket purchased by Stalions held his smartphone up and filmed the home sideline for the entire game. Sources to ESPN said Stalions purchased tickets on both sides of the stadium across from each bench for the Ohio State-Michigan game. Nobody used those tickets because he got caught before that game happened, as you can imagine. None of the tickets that the 11 schools told ESPN about involved Michigan as an opponent, per the sources. So he was going on the road and scouting using technology against the rules. But the scope of this is fascinating because he was paying other people to go to games across the country and film the sidelines and bring them back to him. Here is the rub, though. Here's where it gets really interesting. So Mr. Stalions deleted all of his social media. That is his real name.
What? Stalions. Connor Stalions.
Not an alias. That is his real name.
He was a military guy, too. Officer Stallions, Sergeant Stallions.
His reported salary for Michigan was $55,000. So travel and lodging and tickets for all these games definitely just came out of his pocket, and he was definitely not getting funded and recompensated for those trips by Michigan. No, sir, they had no idea. No. Here's the rub, though. So he deleted Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and scrubbed his social media. Mr. Stalions, though, forgot to delete one brand of social media, and it's Venmo. And if you're not familiar with Venmo, Venmo is an app that you can send money from or receive money from other people. You link your bank account. It consolidates everybody's bank account so you can just send money to whoever for whatever reason. But since all of our brains are broken in society, it is a social media platform, meaning you have a news feed of all of your friends or anybody, if your profile is public, can see who you're sending money to and what for. You get to pick the label. You can call it anything, but there's a whole news feed where you just put, I'm sending money to this person for this reason. And Mr. Stalions apparently was doing a lot of selling of T-shirt orders because that was mostly his Venmo history was for T-shirts. But they even did a worse job of concealing than calling it T-shirt orders in at least one case. Connor Stalions sent a Venmo to a guy named Chase Evans.
The T-shirts are just his picture, and it just says Stallions on the bottom. I would buy that shirt.
I would buy that shirt at this point, too. But Chase Evans, according to his LinkedIn, is a recruiting intern at the University of Michigan starting in November of 2022. Connor Stalions sent Chase Evans money and called it GA, capital G, capital A, on December 30th, 2022. You want to know what happened the next day? Georgia played Ohio State in the college football playoff. He sent this kid money to go against the rules, allegedly, because that's what this implies. We don't know for sure, but this is what happened, allegedly, to go scout Georgia and Ohio State. And not only did they do it publicly with their real names, he even labeled the transaction the abbreviation of the state of Georgia, the day before Georgia played in the college football playoff.
The guy was a graduate assistant. Maybe that's what we're going with here.
Even better, a guy named Adam King, who is a sports reporter for this is CBS Channel 10 in Columbus, Ohio. He went back and dug through his video from the Ohio State-Michigan game a year ago, and he found on the opening possession of the game, that's the rub here. It's not that Michigan was trying to decipher signs during the game. This is the opening possession of the game. C.J. Stroud is in the shotgun. He claps his hands, and like most teams do, look to the sideline to see if they want to change the sign. Stroud looks to the sidelines, and while C.J. Stroud is looking to the sidelines, you can see clear as day on the Michigan sideline, Connor Stalions watching the signals on the Ohio State sideline. He's got a laminated sheet in his hand with every signal, a person doing every signal, and he looks at the signal on his laminated sheet, tells Michigan's defensive coordinator, and they change the play. He had it laminated and prepared. He knew every Ohio State signal, and he had it in front of him in his hands and would watch their sideline, reference his notes, figure out what the little guy on his sheet was doing, and then he would tell the Michigan defensive coordinator, and they would call the game based on that. Caught red-handed, clear as day on the sideline.
Even Hugh Freeze is shaking his head and saying, guys, what are y'all doing? Connor Stalions.
Somebody says, love the show. I bet this is not the only team that does this. So, no, people have tried to decipher signs in many different ways before, but when it's this brazen and obvious, it seems that this is different. And we'll talk about this more when we come back. 601-879-40. There's merit to the question, but there's merit to the people that are also saying, what's the big deal? And we'll talk about that in a second, but I will read the question first. Why is sign stealing an issue? Unless they were obtained through wiretaps and stealth operations like Spygate, what am I missing? Is it not just strategy? Maybe I'm missing the means. Just now hearing of this, yes, the rock I live under is comfortable. So sign stealing is part of sports. If you are on second base, you better be watching what the catcher's signs are. And if you can pick up on something, you better tell your batter, hey, buddy, curveball's coming, however you have to do it. That's part of baseball. The Astros did it through a video feed and were relaying the signals by banging on trash cans. That was the difference in the Astros thing. In college football, Mississippi State on Saturday better be watching the Auburn sideline every snap and trying to figure out, oh, when Freeze touches his head, it means the dumb double quarterback pass is coming. You better be doing that. The issue here is he broke two rules. Now, this one is kind of goofy. You're not allowed to scout future opponents in person. Now, there's 100,000 people at an Ohio State game. So you could just call up a buddy and say, hey, what did you see? But that is technically against NCAA rules. You cannot go to a future opponent to the game and scout them. That is against the rules. It's been against the rules since I was 2 years old. The other issue is the technology. They have been caught red-handed recording sidelines of future opponents, and clearly they are able to use that information to some benefit. How much is it helping them? Probably not so much. Deion Sanders today basically said, I can mail my game plan to my future opponent, and if I'm good enough, they still can't stop me. So there's different levels, there's varying degrees of outrage about this, but that's where Michigan went wrong, is this guy got caught recording future opponents in person breaking multiple NCAA rules. We've got another message about, here's one right here. It says it's done all the time from the traditional angle of even simple game film. You can pause and go back and see the sideline. This type of thing is done a lot, but not certainly to the extent you're talking about sending people to film the sideline. That puts it in another realm. That's where I completely agree. That's what makes this different. Maybe this happens all the time. I've seen people say that, oh, it's no big deal. Colin Cowherd today said if Purdue did it, nobody would care. Well, of course not, because they stink. But this is Michigan, possibly the best team in the country, egregiously and obviously breaking a rule. And we've got a couple of people saying, like, well, shouldn't you just change your signs and indicators? Good point. Very true. You should. You should mix things up always. But when you are facing somebody that did something that's against the rules, they broke rules, you don't expect them to be able to record your entire sideline for an entire game. You know what I mean? It's a little bit different when you know that, hey, they're up in the press box behind us, so you better bring out that white sheet to block our signs. You expect in the course of a game them to be able to see that. But you do not expect Michigan, who you play in Week 11, to have full film of your sideline every single week. And so you don't prepare for them having that information because they obtain that information outside the scope of the rules, multiple rules. But I do agree with a couple of other messages we've gotten. There's an easy solution. Put the microphone in the helmet and this is done. And they're going to do it for bowl season, apparently. This will end after this season. They're going to put microphones in the quarterbacks' helmets, and this will be the catalyst for why everybody got on board with that. That will end it, yes.
I agree. We'll see how it goes. I still think it's more funny than malicious.
Yeah. I mean, how stupid are you?
I can't get overly worked up about potential penalties and you know what the sanctity of the game or anything like that. But I can certainly laugh my off at Connor Stallions and his Venmo history getting yeah.
Exactly.
Goodness gracious. You can make Venmo transactions private, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
Well, Mr. Stallions did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah. The same way, what is it with people's inability to redact things that are going to get them in trouble? If you're going to do something that gets you in trouble, make it private. It's easy to do. Almost everything has that ability.
Somebody said, how can you prevent someone from sitting in the stands and just run an iPhone with an 8K camera? You can't. But if they want to offer that to you, you cannot accept it. I mean, guys, I'm telling you, this dude, it was so thorough and detailed. He had laminated play sheets with the signals on them and was relaying them to the defensive coordinator. And so when you see that, when you're caught red-handed in that regard, it removes Michigan's plausible deniability. You can't say, oh, he was just rogue. We didn't know. It didn't help us. When there is video of him watching a signal, looking at his prepared sheet, and telling the defensive coordinator they're running this right now, and then changing the play because of that. And so you can talk about whether or not it's a big deal, but man, they are caught red-handed. And quite frankly, I don't think Michigan should be punished. I don't think, like I said before, I don't think the players should be. This isn't their fault. But I do think if you're caught this brazenly, this stupidly, then you should be punished pretty severely. I don't know what that looks like, but it needs to happen, I think.
That's a good rule for life. If you could have gotten away with it, but you were so stupid in the way you did it, that should be an extra year in jail. Like, hey, we were only going to give you 6 months, but you went on Facebook and showed off what you had stolen.
Right.
That's a year and a half. You get 18 months. I think that's totally a fair way to run society, personally.
We got a couple of messages like this. One from Darren said, when they put mics in the helmets and they will hire some geek to figure out what bandwidth they are operating on. Another one, cheaters will always cheat. Pretty easy to intercept radio signals also. So the NFL has not run into that issue at all. And if the NFL, a league that has billions on the line, has figured out how to keep it closed-circuited and untappable, then I think college can as well. I mean, I think it is a closed circuit. I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong. But if I'm not, here's what I think it is. I think it is a closed-circuited communication between coach and quarterback that I don't think it can be tapped into. I think it's impossible, and all of those things have oversight on it to where they can't really be tampered with. So if the NFL has figured out how to make that not a thing, college is going to be fine too.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
And it's not expensive at all. I mean, it's just simply not expensive to do that. This is what's going to come of it. I do think Stallions shouldn't be allowed to coach again. I think every coach at Michigan involved in this should be given a multi-year show cause at best. Frankly, I think that Harbaugh should. If you are this stupid, you should get caught. I agree with what you said, hey, Dad, and essentially what I said. If you're this dumb, you kind of get what you get. It's like, we lock our houses when we leave the house, right? If somebody breaks into our home, it's their fault, whether or not the door was locked. But we still lock the door anyway. Just because cheaters cheat and they'll always find a way, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do things to make it more difficult for them.
Yeah. This reminds me of Full Metal Jacket. If it weren't for idiots like you, there wouldn't be any thievery in the world. Yeah, just lock your door. Yeah, like I said, the other thing I am interested in is I'm not saying there's a witch hunt, but there does seem like there's a lot of smoke around Michigan this past year. And Harbaugh is not much longer for that. I mean, he's just going to be like, you know what, I'm tired of this. I love my alma mater and I love coaching here, but it's just not worth the headache anymore. I'm going to go back to the NFL.
Somebody says the quarterback helmet speaker in college won't change much.
Michigan head coach Lane Kiffin.
They couldn't stand having somebody like him coaching Michigan. They would hate
Lane Kiffin, a Michigan man?
They would hate him. But what an interesting job opening that would be.
Worse fit, Kiffin at Michigan or Kiffin at Texas A&M?
A&M's worse. Because Michigan's not culty. They're elitist. There's a difference between elitist and cultist.
Yeah,
you know what I
right.
mean?
Now, you're right about that. I agree with that.
But somebody says the speaker and the helmet won't change much because college teams don't huddle. They'll have to signal. But, yes, they huddle far less than NFL teams. But you can still do it differently if the quarterback, as opposed to having to look to the sideline to know what the play is, you can relay it differently. And it's much harder for a defense if they hear a verbal cue from quarterback to offensive line. It's much more difficult for a defense to translate that, send it to the sideline, get a call back. It removes, or excuse me, it adds a layer of protection, even if it's not completely foolproof. It can certainly help get rid of this kind of discourse. They've got that technology in high school. They've got it at some middle schools at this point. They've got it in the NFL. It skips college. And we've got $200 million athletic budgets in the SEC.